I never thought the day would come when my own son would look me in the eyes and tell me to get out of the house we'd built together. But that's exactly what happened, just days after he inherited $53 million. One moment, I was his mother, the woman who'd sacrificed everything to raise him, who'd stood by him through every scraped knee and broken heart. The next, I was nothing more than an inconvenience, someone to be swept aside now that he had more money than he could ever spend in a lifetime. The words he used still echo in my mind. "You don't belong here anymore, Mom. I need space. Need to live my own life." There was no warmth in his voice, no gratitude for the years I'd spent putting his needs before my own. Just cold, hard finality. I remember standing there, suitcase in hand, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. The house felt suddenly enormous and empty, as if it had already forgotten me. I wish I could say I saw it coming, that there were warning signs I'd ignored. But the truth is, nothing prepares you for the moment your child chooses money over family. I walked out that door with tears streaming down my face, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. But what I didn't know then was that fate had a cruel sense of irony, and that in just a few days, my son would be the one begging for my help. Desperate for the love and support he'd so carelessly thrown away. Before the money, our lives were simple, sometimes painfully so. I raised my son Daniel on my own after his father left us when he was just 6. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, where the walls were thin and the neighbors were loud, but it was home. I worked 2 jobs waitressing at a diner during the day and cleaning offices at night just to keep the lights on and food in the fridge. There were nights when I'd come home so exhausted I could barely stand. But I'd still find the energy to sit with Daniel, help him with his homework, and listen to him talk about his dreams. Daniel was always a bright, sensitive boy. He'd curl up next to me on the couch, asking questions about the world, his eyes wide with curiosity. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I tried to make up for what we lacked in material things with love and attention. Birthdays were homemade cakes and hand-me-down toys, but Daniel never complained. He'd hug me tight and say, "It's perfect, Mom. You're the best." Those words meant more to me than anything money could buy. Our bond was strong, but not without its challenges. As Daniel grew older, he started to notice the things we didn't have. He'd see his classmates with new clothes, the latest gadgets, and expensive vacations. And I could sense his quiet longing. Sometimes he'd come home sullen, refusing to talk about his day. I did my best to reassure him, to remind him that what mattered most was the love we shared, but I could see the resentment building little by little. Still, we made it work. I taught Daniel the value of hard work and honesty. I wanted him to know that nothing in life was handed to you, that you had to earn your place in the world. I hoped he'd grow up to be kind, grateful, and resilient. I never imagined that the very thing I tried to protect him from, the corrosive power of money, would one day come between us when Daniel's great uncle passed away, leaving behind a fortune no one expected. Our world changed overnight. Suddenly, Daniel was the sole heir to $53 million. The news hit us like a tidal wave. I remember the day the lawyer called, his voice trembling with excitement as he explained the details. Daniel was stunned, barely able to process what was happening. For a brief moment, I thought maybe this was our chance to finally breathe, to enjoy a little comfort after years of struggle. But almost immediately, I noticed a shift in Daniel. The boy who used to beg me to read him bedtime stories now spent hours on the phone with strangers, lawyers, financial advisors, people who spoke in numbers and percentages. He started talking about investments, properties, and living life to the fullest. The warmth in our home began to fade, replaced by a cold, unfamiliar distance. He stopped asking me for advice, stopped sharing his thoughts and feelings. It was as if the money had built an invisible wall between us, one I couldn't climb no matter how hard I tried. Looking back, I can see the contrast so clearly. Before the windfall, we were a team, facing the world together. After, I became a bystander in my own life, watching my son slip further and further away. I tried to hold on to remind him of where we came from and what truly mattered, but the lure of wealth was stronger than any lesson I could teach. And in the end, it cost us everything at least. That's how it felt in those first painful days. But as I would soon learn, life has a way of humbling even the proudest hearts. The first cracks appeared so subtly, I almost convinced myself I was imagining them. At first, Daniel was just distracted, preoccupied with meetings and phone calls, his attention always somewhere else. But soon, the changes became impossible to ignore. He started coming home late, sometimes not at all, and when he did, he was always in a rush, barely glancing up from his phone as he breezed past me. One evening, I tried to sit down with him over dinner, hoping to reconnect. I'd made his favorite chicken pot pie the way he liked it, with extra thyme and a buttery crust. He barely touched his plate, scrolling through messages and emails, his fork clinking absent-mindedly against the dish. "Daniel, can we talk for a minute?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't look up. "I'm busy, Mom. Can't it wait? It's just, I feel like we haven't really talked in days. I miss you." He sighed, finally setting his phone down. I'm not a kid anymore. I have a lot going on. You wouldn't understand." The words stung, but I tried to brush them off. "I know you're busy, but I just want to make sure you're okay. This is a big change for both of us." He rolled his eyes. "I'm fine. Honestly, you worry too much. Maybe you should try to relax for once." That night, I lay awake, replaying the conversation in my mind. The boy who used to confide in me about everything now treated me like an annoyance. I told myself it was just a phase, that he was overwhelmed, but deep down I felt something slipping away. The next week, Daniel started bringing new people around, friends I'd never met, all of them loud and flashy with expensive clothes and even more expensive cars. They'd fill the house with laughter and music, drinking late into the night. I felt like a stranger in my own home, tiptoeing around their messes, ignored and invisible. One afternoon, I overheard Daniel bragging to his friends in the living room. "Yeah, I could buy this whole block if I wanted to. Money's not a problem." "Anymore?" His friends cheered, clinking their glasses together. I stood in the hallway, my heart sinking. This wasn't the Daniel I knew, the humble, thoughtful boy I'd raised. Later, I tried to talk to him about it. "Daniel, I'm worried about the people you're spending time with. They don't seem to care about you." "Not really," he scoffed. "You don't know them, Mom. Stop judging. It's because you never had anything doesn't mean I can't enjoy myself." The words hit me like a slap. I felt my cheeks burn with shame and anger, but I bit my tongue. Didn't want to fight. I just wanted my son back as the days passed. Daniel's entitlement grew. He started making demands, insisting I stay out of certain rooms, criticizing the way I cleaned, even complaining about the meals I cooked. "Why don't you just hire someone?" he snapped one morning, pushing his untouched breakfast aside. "We can afford it now." I tried to remind him of our old life, of the values we'd shared. "Money doesn't change who we are, Daniel. Shouldn't come between us." He laughed, cold and dismissive. "Maybe it's time you realize things are different now. I'm not a little boy anymore, and you're not in charge." The pain of his words settled deep in my chest, heavier with each passing day. I watched as he drifted further away, lost in a world of excess and ego. The house that once echoed with laughter now felt cold and unfamiliar, filled with strangers and shadows. I started to wonder if I'd lost him for good. But even as I tried to hold on, I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet. The tension building towards something I couldn't yet name. I had no idea just how quickly everything would unravel, how much it would hurt when it finally did. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. It's the kind of day that used to mean pancakes and lazy mornings, but now felt tense and unpredictable. I'd spent the morning cleaning up after another one of Daniel's parties, scrubbing sticky counters and picking up empty bottles while laughter drifted down from upstairs. I tried to ignore the ache in my back and the ache in my heart, telling myself that if I just kept things together, maybe Daniel would come to his senses. But that afternoon, everything came to a head. Daniel stormed into the kitchen, his face flushed with anger. Behind him trailed two of his new friends, smirking as if they were in on some private joke. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice sharp and impatient. I set down the dish I was washing, drying my hands on a towel. "What is it, Daniel?" He didn't meet my eyes. "I've been thinking. This isn't working anymore. I need space. I can't have you here, always hovering, always judging me." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Daniel, what are you talking about? This is our home." He shook his head, his jaw clenched. "No, it's my home now. I paid for it. I pay for everything. I'm an adult, and I need to live my own life, without you breathing down my neck." His friends snickered, and I felt a wave of humiliation wash over me. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm not trying to control you. I just want what's best for you. I'm your mother." He finally looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the boy I used to know. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You don't get it, Mom. You never have. I need you to leave." Today, the words hung in the air, heavy and final. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of regret, any hint that he didn't mean it. But all I saw was cold determination. "Where am I supposed to go?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "You'll figure it out. You always do." I felt my knees go weak, but I refused to let him see me break. I walked past him, my hands trembling as I climbed the stairs to my room. I packed my things in silence, each item a reminder of the life. We'd shared the family photos, the old sweater he'd given me for Mother's Day, the little trinkets from years gone by. I could hear Daniel and his friends laughing downstairs, their voices growing louder as I zipped up my suitcase. When I came back down, Daniel was waiting by the door, his arms crossed. He didn't say a word as I walked past him, my heart pounding in my chest. I paused for a moment, hoping he'd stop me, apologize, beg me to stay. But he just stared straight ahead, his face a mask of indifference. I stepped outside, sunlight blinding after the darkness inside. The door closed behind me with a final echoing thud. I stood on the porch, my suitcase at my feet, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. As I walked away from the house, I tried to hold back the tears, but they came anyway, hot and relentless. I kept replaying the confrontation in my mind, wondering where I'd gone wrong. How the boy I'd loved so fiercely could turn on me so completely. But even as I stumbled into the unknown, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Something inside me whispered that Daniel's story and mine was far from over. I had no idea what would happen next. But I knew the consequences of this day would ripple through both our lives in ways neither of us could imagine. The first night after Daniel threw me out, I slept in my car. I parked in the lot behind the old grocery store, the one where I used to take Daniel for ice cream after school when he was little. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wrapped myself in my coat, clutching my phone to my chest, hoping for a message. That never came. The silence was deafening. I kept replaying the confrontation, searching for some sign that it was all a terrible mistake, that Daniel would call and beg me to come home. But the phone stayed dark, and the world outside felt colder than ever. The next morning, I woke up stiff and aching, my mind foggy with exhaustion and heartbreak. I tried to gather my thoughts to make a plan, but everything felt overwhelming. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. Most of my friends had drifted away over the years, busy with their own families and lives. I thought about calling my sister, but we hadn't spoken in years. Not since a fight over something neither of us could even remember. Pride kept me from reaching out. I told myself I'd figure it out, just like Daniel said. Meanwhile, Daniel's world was spinning faster than ever. I caught glimpses of his new life through social media photos of him at clubs, surrounded by people I'd never met. His arms slung around women in designer dresses, champagne bottles lined up on the table. He looked happy, at least on the surface, but I could see the strain in his eyes, the forced smiles. The boy who once found joy in the simplest things now seemed lost in a whirlwind of excess. I spent my days searching for work, applying for jobs at diners and cleaning companies, but no one wanted to hire a middle-aged woman with no recent references. I showered at the gym, ate cheap sandwiches from the gas station, and tried to keep my spirits up. Every night I'd check my phone hoping for a message from Daniel. Every night I was disappointed. The contrast between our lives couldn't have been starker. Daniel's days were filled with parties and luxury, while mine were a struggle for survival. He bought a new sports car, posted photos of himself on yachts, and bragged about his latest investments. I watched from the outside, feeling invisible and forgotten. The pain of his rejection was sharper than any hardship I'd ever faced. But even as Daniel's world grew bigger, his circle grew smaller. Started hearing rumors from old neighbors and mutual friends. People whispered about wild parties, broken furniture, and police being called to the house. Daniel's new friends were using him, taking advantage of his generosity and naivety. He started missing appointments, losing track of his finances, and making reckless decisions. The money that once seemed endless was slipping through his fingers faster than he could spend it. One afternoon, I saw a photo of Daniel online, his eyes red, his face drawn and tired. The comments were cruel, mocking his appearance and speculating about his mental state. My heart ached for him, but I didn't know how to reach out. I wanted to protect him, to pull him back from the edge. But I was still nursing my own wounds. The rift between us deepened with every passing day. I tried to remind myself that I'd done everything I could, that Daniel was an adult and had to make his own choices. But the guilt lingered, heavy and unrelenting. I wondered if I'd failed him, if I'd somehow planted the seeds of his downfall. As I lay awake in my car, listening to the distant hum of traffic, I realized that both of us were lost, trapped in separate worlds, each suffering in our own way. I didn't know how or if we'd ever find our way back to each other. But deep down, I still held on to a sliver of hope. Because sometimes it's only when you lose everything that you finally see what truly matters. And I had a feeling that Daniel was about to learn that lesson the hard way. It was a rainy Thursday when everything finally came crashing down for Daniel. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, but that morning my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. On the other end, Daniel's voice was barely more than a whisper, shaky, raw, and nothing like the confident young man who'd thrown me out. "Mom, I need you," he said, his words tumbling out between ragged breaths. "Please, I don't know what to do." For a moment, I was frozen, unsure if I was dreaming. But the pain in his voice was real, and it cut through every wall I'd built around my heart. I asked him where he was, and he gave me an address, an unfamiliar apartment complex on the other side of town. I drove there in silence, my mind racing with questions and fears. When I arrived, found Daniel sitting on the curb, drenched from the rain, his expensive clothes rumpled and stained. He looked up at me with red, swollen eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to run to me when he was scared. He broke down as soon as I sat beside him. "They took everything, Mom. The money's almost gone." My friends, they weren't really my friends. They stole from me, lied to me. I tried to trust them, but I was so stupid. I thought I could handle it all, but I can't. I can't do this alone. His words spilled out in a torrent, stories of betrayal, of loans that would never be repaid, of parties that ended with broken promises and empty bank accounts. He told me about the night he realized his so-called friends had disappeared, leaving him with nothing but debts and regret. The bravado was gone, replaced by a raw, aching vulnerability I hadn't seen since he was a child. I listened, my heart breaking for him, but also for myself, for all the years we'd lost, for the pain we'd both endured. Part of me wanted to say, "I told you so," to remind him of the warnings he'd ignored. But as I looked at him, shivering and alone, I knew that what he needed most wasn't judgment. It was love. He reached for my hand, his grip desperate. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was wrong. I need you. Please. Can you ever forgive me?" I didn't answer right away. The wounds were still fresh, and forgiveness wasn't something I could give lightly. But in that moment, I saw the boy I'd raised, the one who needed his mother, not her anger. I squeezed his hand, letting him know that, despite everything, I was still there. As we sat together in the rain, I realized that this was our turning point. Daniel had finally seen the truth about the people around him and about himself. Whether or not I could forgive him completely, I knew that healing had to start somewhere. And maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. Sitting there on the curb, rain soaking through my clothes, I realized I was at a crossroads. Daniel's hand trembled in mine, his eyes pleading for forgiveness, for a second chance. My heart ached with the weight of everything we'd been through, the sacrifices, the betrayal, the loneliness. Part of me wanted to turn away, to protect myself from more pain. But another part, the part that had always loved him unconditionally, couldn't ignore his suffering. I took a deep breath, searching his face for sincerity. "Daniel, I can't pretend what you didn't hurt me. You broke my heart, but you're still my son. Can't leave you out here alone." My voice cracked, but I meant every word. I saw relief flood his features, mingled with shame and gratitude. We sat in silence for a while, letting the rain wash over us, as if it could cleanse the past. Eventually, I helped him to his feet and we walked to my car. The drive was quiet, heavy with unspoken words. I took him to the small motel room I'd been calling home, a far cry from the house we'd once shared. Daniel looked around, his eyes lingering on the worn carpet and faded curtains. I could see the realization dawning on him, how far we'd both fallen. That night, we talked for hours. Daniel confessed everything: the reckless spending, the fake friends, the loneliness that had haunted him even in the midst of all that wealth. He apologized again and again, his voice breaking as he admitted how lost he'd felt without me. I listened, sometimes in silence, sometimes through tears. I told him about my own struggles, the nights I'd spent in my car, the jobs I couldn't get, the pain of being cast aside by the person I loved most. Slowly, the walls between us began to crumble. It wasn't easy. Trust once broken doesn't heal overnight. There were moments when anger flared, when old wounds reopened. But there were also moments of laughter, of shared memories, of hope. We started to rebuild one conversation at a time. Daniel found work at a local garage, determined to earn his way back, not just with me, but with himself. He moved into a small apartment nearby, and we made a habit of meeting for coffee every Sunday. Our relationship was different now, more cautious, more honest. The innocence of our old bond was gone, replaced by something deeper, forged in pain and forgiveness. Sometimes I missed the life we'd had before the money, before everything changed. But I also knew that we'd both grown stronger, wiser, more aware of what truly mattered. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hope. As I watched Daniel begin to rebuild his life, I realized that love isn't about never being hurt. It's about finding the courage to forgive, to start again, even when it seems impossible. And in that bittersweet truth, I found a kind of peace I never expected. Looking back, I realized that real, unconditional love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until there's nothing left. It means setting boundaries, even with the people you cherish most. I learned that my worth isn't defined by how much I give or how much I endure, but by the strength it takes to stand up for myself. Even when my heart is breaking, losing Daniel, even for a little while, forced me to confront the parts of myself I'd neglected for years. I had to learn how to survive on my own, to find value in my own company, and to forgive myself for the mistakes I made as a mother. I discovered that forgiveness isn't just a gift you give to others, it's something you owe yourself. 2. Rebuilding our relationship wasn't easy, and it's still a work in progress. But I'm proud of the woman I've become, a woman who can love fiercely, but also protect her own heart. I hope Daniel has learned too that money can buy a lot of things, but it can't replace the people who truly care for you. If you're listening to my story and you've ever felt betrayed or cast aside by someone you love, know this: you are stronger than you think. You deserve respect, kindness, and a love that lifts you up, not one that tears you down. And sometimes the hardest goodbyes lead to the most powerful new beginnings. As for what happened next, well, life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. But that's a story for another day.